Season 38, war number 10, and we are up against X+K9. This time my team will be Tigra, Pryde and Omega Sentinel. I'm taking path 5 in section 1, as well as that America Chavez, and that Sersi on the Azad shift node. I'm also taking that Super-Skrull and Hyperion, path 5 in section 2, as well as that Rintrah on the shared fight, and then all the right side mini-bosses. So, a pretty busy 12-fight war. We are currently tied with X+K9 on our win-lose ratio, so winning this one would mean that we are almost locked in second place. First fight here, we have a Valkyrie on the Ebb and Flow knockdown and right back added nodes, and I'm taking this fight with Pryde. The game plan here is to just get to my special 2 with as much prowess as possible, knock her down to remove the protection, and then just drop a big special 2 to nuke her down. To knock her down on this node, I punish her special 1 with a heavy attack instead of relying on my parries, because Valkyrie has a chance to shrug off non-damaging debuffs. Her debuff shrugging is basically the only ability she has that makes her somewhat of an annoying defender. The other thing would be those evade charges she gets with her special 1, but as long as you don't let her hit into your block, they will never trigger, so you don't have to worry about that. And now I'm all set up. I didn't quite get to 20 prowess, but even with less than that, the special 2 was more than enough to take her down. It was a pretty simple fight for Kitty, but basically anyone can take her there. Next up we have a Pryde on the Ebb and Flow knockdown and heavy hitter nodes, and I'm taking this fight with Omega Sentinel. I didn't use any pre-fights here, so that Omega Sentinel starts with the Cowardice debuff mode active, because the Cowardice debuffs, or any Cowardice effects, completely shut down Pryde. They remove all of her personal prowess and prevent her from gaining any more of them for as long as the Cowardice effects last. And without any prowess, Pryde doesn't do anything as a defender. For this fight I'm just gonna be taking her down basic attacks, and that's all I'm gonna be doing for the whole fight. I won't be using heavy attacks because that switches my debuff modes, and I won't be using specials because of recoil and all of that. And since Pryde has a very small health pool, the protection doesn't make the fight too long. The fight is just about over, and Omega Sentinel hasn't even lost 1% of her HP. It just goes to show how tanky she can be. Next up we have an America Chavez on the Ebb and Flow knockdown and right back added nodes, and I'm taking this fight with Pryde. Now, normally for this fight my plan is to just do the normal big special 2 to nuke her down, but this time I'm playing it a little bit safer and going for a special 3 instead. Now, looking back, the special 2 probably would have been just fine, but I wanted to be sure that I wouldn't be making any dumb mistakes and costing any attack bonuses, because we really did have to win this war. I'm doing my best to face block both of her specials whenever I can, just to avoid triggering dexterity, because Mystic Dispersion is really feeding her some power, and it's just making the fight a lot more annoying than it needs to be. Now that I'm at my special 3, I just need to get her cornered and go for a face heavy attack to remove the protection, and then just drop the special 3. I did trigger my phasing before throwing this, just to get the long phase afterwards, just in case it didn't finish her off, and it didn't. But since I had those mutant power boosts active, I got back to my special 1 with that special 3, and throwing that one was enough to finish her off. Next up we have a Sersi on the Hazard Shift, Incinerate and Shock, as well as Insult to Injury nodes, and I'm taking this fight with Pryde. And because of that Insult to Injury node, I did have to remove my recoil masteries for this. The reason why is because I can't afford to have any debuffs on me, and since I would have that poison on me constantly, it's just not something I wanna deal with here. Any debuff on me lowers my defensive ability accuracy, which can cause my parries to fail, and even when the parries do land, they won't necessarily give me 3 prowess like they are supposed to. So the game plan here is to just use the White Magneto pre-fight to ramp up my prowess even during the shock phase. I completely avoid hitting her during the shock phase, because I don't want to get any of those shock debuffs on me, for the reason I said earlier about the poison debuff. Then the tricky part is trying to time the glancing debuff cooldown at the same time as that Incinerate phases up and then drops big special 2s to take her down with those. It sounds pretty simple, but the fact that you have to time your special 2s with 2 different timers, being the glancing and the hazard shift, it gets a little bit tricky. The fight itself is pretty risk-free as long as you don't hit into her during the shock phase too much, and as long as you make sure that you do not get cornered. Another thing to note here is that you do not want to get your special 3, because Sersi is a conduit defender, and the special 3 inflicts a very long Incinerate debuff or an Incinerate passive, and that just makes the long fight even longer, maybe even risking a timeout. So, as you saw me there, I did use a special 2 into her block, just for that reason. I couldn't afford to be pushed to my special 3. Now, here I messed up and got pushed to my special 3, which is not what I wanted to do. And now, instead of trying to finish her off with that special 3, I played safe and just take her down slowly but surely with basic attacks and by phasing the last hit of her special 1. Using the special 3 would probably finish her off, but in case it doesn't and she gets that long Incinerate, it's just not worth it. The fight took just under 3 minutes, but I'd say it is a pretty safe fight for Pryde, as long as you play it well. Now, while waiting for someone else to take the step to Super-Skrull, I'm gonna be switching on my Mystic power boosts, because the next fight is a fight that I need to nuke down with Tigra. Here we have a Super-Skrull on the Scared Stiff node, and I'm taking this fight with Tigra. The game plan here is to nuke him down with a single special 2, and to do that I use an advanced power boost to start with a bar of power. Then I bait 2 heavy attacks from Super-Skrull at the start of the fight and punish them with my heavy. Those ruptures give me power as well as make my special 2 hit harder, and those 2 heavy counters are enough to get me to my special 2. The special 2 itself was not quite enough to finish him off, but with the Mystic power boosts as well as the Rupture triggers, I got enough power to get to my special 1, and I chained it in straight after. Then next up we have a Hyperion on the Power Snack and 1 too many hits nodes, and I'm taking this fight with Omega Sentinel. The game plan here is to just rely on an invulnerability boost and the fact that Omega Sentinel is immune to Nullify, so that Power Snack won't be giving him any extra power gain. I start with the heal block debuff mode active, just so I can shut down any willpower healing, as well as shut down Conduit in case I do knock him down or trigger any of my Incinerates otherwise. The game plan here is to just use my basic attacks to take him down, bait specials whenever possible, but since Hyperion is Hyperion, he will more than likely get his special 3 at least once. The first special 3 is quite easy to avoid, usually, but if he throws it, the second one is coming soon after with all those extra power gain buffs he gets. However, if he uses a special 3 while he has 3 of his cosmic charges active, he gets a very long power gain buff, but that buff is a lot weaker than his normal ones. And while he has a power gain buff active, he can't trigger new ones, meaning that he has basically shut down his own power gain. That being said, I do think this is a very safe fight for Omega Sentinel, because with an invulnerability boost on, you can tank 3 special 3s without any risks, and at that point Hyperion has shut down his own power gain, meaning that the rest of the fight should go down easy. But just as a warning, if you do take this fight, do not eat any basic attacks. If you use your invulnerability boost by eating his basic attacks, you have almost no protection against his special 3s. Omega Sentinel is very tanky with her armor buffs, but eating multiple special 3s is not something you wanna do with someone who has a small health pool like Omega Sentinel. Now I do have a couple kitty fights coming up, so I'm gonna be throwing my mutant power boosts back on, and this fight is a Wong on the Ebb and Flow intercept node, and I am taking it with Kitty Pryde. The game plan is to just do the normal nuke strategy, get as much prowess as possible, get the special 2, remove the protection, and nuke him down. But against Wong, I do like to bait his special 2 instead of the special 1, because the special 1 triggers his spells. So as long as you keep baiting the special 2, he doesn't really do anything. It is somewhat difficult to dex, but with Kitty Pryde you can just face block it, or straight up face it if you feel like it. And just like that, Wong goes down without any issues. I did get the crossfight here because he had overpower of power, but that is not an issue. All the crossfight does is give the next opponent I fight with Kitty Pryde a power gain and a fury passive at the start of the fight. Sure, it is somewhat annoying depending on who you fight, and depending on the fight it can actually be a very big deal, but since my next fight is just a Rintrah, it's no problem. But before that, we have a Domino on the Ebb and Flow intercept and mighty charge nodes. I'm taking this fight with the Omega Sentinel, starting with the heal block debuff mode active. I don't really need the heal block debuff here, but I just default to it whenever I don't need any of the other debuffs, just for the fact that it does shut down the willpower healing of the defender. The game plan here is to just take her down with basic attacks, slowly but surely. Get an intercept whenever possible to remove the protection to speed up the fight. You don't have to go for intercepts. This fight is still a very easy one because Omega Sentinel is a pretty damn good counter for Domino. Her ability accuracy can't be reduced by mutants, and none of her abilities are chance based, so Domino simply doesn't trigger her crit fail. That being said, Domino is basically just a normal defender with a very predictable evade while she has that lucky active. You can also land that intercept to remove the protection by shallow evading her dash attack, which also just makes the fight a lot easier. And there we go. The fight took a little over a minute, so not the fastest, but considering I didn't use any specials or any of that, I'd say it was a very fast fight. Next up we have the good old Rintrah on the Ebb and Flow intercept and mighty charge nodes, and I'm taking this fight with Kitty Pryde. And the only difference here is that I have the crossfight from Wong, which just gives this Rintrah a burst of power at the start as well as a passive theory. That's the only difference. And because of that, I'm just gonna be speeding through this whole fight, and I'll see you on the next one. And this special 3 is enough to finish him off. Honestly, I hope I never have to fight a Rintrah again in Alliance really. It's such a boring fight and I've taken it so many times that it's not even funny. Now I'm just waiting for a teammate to lend me some energy to get to that King Groot, because I've been using so many units on refills that any help is appreciated. And just like that Rintrah, we have the good old King Groot on the Safeguard mini-boss node, and I'm taking this fight with Omega Sentinel, starting with the heal block debuff mode active, and just like the previous fight, I have done this one so many times that there is nothing else to explain or talk about, so I'm just gonna be speeding through the whole fight, and I'll see you on the next one. Definitely one of my worst King Groot solos on this node, but a solo is a solo, so I'll take it. As long as I don't die to a King Groot there, I'll be happy. Next up we have a Scorpion on the Stunning Reflection and Polka Dot Power mini-boss nodes, and I'm taking this fight with Pryde. Now, I have taken Scorpions before with her, but I don't think I have ever taken him on this node before. And since I can't parry here, I need to rely on intercepting and criticals to gain my prowess. Even then, the fight is pretty simple. The game plan is to just get to 10 prowess to get that unblockable for my openings, and I'm gonna be baiting his special 2s instead of the special 1, because it's a lot easier to dex. Then all that is left to do is just keep doing medium light combos for the rest of the fight. If he evades, the counter attack misses into your facing, just like there, and he won't be able to punish you. He will still trigger the sting debuff, which is that poison I have there, but since you will be facing for most of the fight, it's not gonna do anything. And even then, the damage on it is close to nothing. And as long as you just keep doing medium light combos, he doesn't get to do anything. A very simple fight, and thanks to his low health pool, the fight took just over a minute. Next up we have the final fight of this war, an Ebony Maw on the Brute Force mini-boss node, and I'm taking this fight with Omega Sentinel, starting with the tracking debuff mode active. I also do have the White Magneto pre-fight here, just to give me a small damage boost as well as that passive stun to bypass Limber. Although I won't be going for that many parries because of disorients, so essentially it just gives me more damage. The game plan here is to rely on that tracking debuff to bypass miss, as well as Omega Sentinel's immunity to nullify. Ebony Maw can't then nullify that fury buff he gives you, which means that you won't be taking that big degeneration damage. The biggest issue with fighting Ebony Maw with Omega Sentinel is the fact that those fury buffs, they can't be nullified, but they will still expire, which will feed Mystic Dispassion. And if you trigger Dexterity as well, well, that's more power from Mystic Dispassion. So the biggest risk in this fight, as we saw previous season, is eating that special 2, because the degen on that is not a joke. You will more than likely drop dead with basically any champion if you do eat it while the falter is up. Even if the falter isn't up, it's still a lot of damage. Better to just not eat it. So instead of even trying to dex it, I will be blocking it because I do not want a repeat of last time. Now, thanks to his AI being annoying, I took a ton of damage from Brute Force, and I also dropped the tracking debuffs. Luckily I did get those tracking debuffs up before the falter came back again, but that Brute Force damage just made the fight a lot sketchier than it needed to be. Now again he decides that he doesn't want to throw a special, and that Brute Force is ticking down. I need to keep hitting him to reset the timer, as well as to keep those tracking debuffs up, but now he's dangerously close to that special 3. I triggered Dexterity, so hitting him even once here pushed him to his special 3, and I just had to go for it. I couldn't afford to wait around with the Brute Force, so I went all or nothing, pushed him to his special 3, finished my combo and threw my special 3. Luckily it was enough to finish him off, but that was scary. I hate fighting him. Now we did end up winning the war 9-3. I got to keep my deathless streak even with that scare, and we basically locked in 2nd place. But just to make sure, we will be pushing the next war as well, and we are pushing hard.